The way down was concrete and blank. Several hundred steps in, the staircase became periodically illuminated with solitary caged light bulbs, some flickering on their last watt. The poor visibility and steep grade made the going slow. Blakey could only wonder who built all of this and why. The voice offered, "It might not be real. You might already be dead, and this might be the way to hell." That seemed more likely with every step. About 20 steps more, and the concrete changed. Older, not as well made, and a different shade of grey. There was something scrawled into the newer concrete at the border, where the older surface took over. "God forgive me," was etched lightly at the bottom of the wall where it met with the step, and not meant to be seen. But Blakey's flashlight caught it. He grimaced at it and continued. 100 more steps down, he finally did reach the bottom, and he looked back up the stairs, only seeing as far as the last light, 30 feet up. The next light was not even visible because of the stairway's steep angle. Blakey crunched something underfoot, and the sound reverberated loudly in the dark. He bent down and found a glow stick that was broken open with the liquid oozing out. Blakey threw a worried glance back the way he came, even though there was nothing to see. You could go back. Blakey wasn't claustrophobic, but this was certainly testing him, and that was when the flashlight gave out. "Oh, of course," he grumbled, and the silence after his words was almost as frightening as the darkness. He remembered the white rabbit lighter and fished it out of his pocket. Flicking it on, it provided a very small glow, and within 10 seconds it burnt his hand. He realized he could only use it in bursts. The tiny pinpoint of the final stairlight floated in black space behind him like a star in the night sky. With a great trembling sigh of fear, feebly masked as frustration, he continued into the dark, holding the wall as a guide. He thought they could be waiting right here. He thought he was probably walking right to them. He began doubting whether the breathing sound was his. He stopped every 10 feet to flick on the lighter and double-check that he was the only source of sound, waiting a paralyzing amount of time for his ears to discern anything else in the silence. Then the lighter burnt his hand again, and he let go of the trigger button. The combination of no sight but hearing everything was overwhelming, and his heart throbbed in his throat. His breathing became uncontrollable and strident. I might be trapped. The next 20 feet seemed like a mile. He lit the lighter again, and this time he watched to see if the flame indicated any kind of draft. The flame was even and strong. The air was still and stale with a hint of water mold. The path got a little narrower, and he had to duck slightly. Now, claustrophobic or not, his heart was racing. He then heard a whisper. At least he thought he heard a whisper, and he didn't dare call out. He flicked on the lighter again and held it toward the way behind and waited for another whisper. There wasn't one. He flicked off the lighter and continued forward, but hurried, still hugging the wall as a guide, his feet stumbling, making considerable noise that reverberated like in an echo chamber. A red emergency light appeared, almost like an illusion. He hurried towards it, and it became more discernible. When he reached the light, he could see that 5 feet beyond it, the path ended in an iron hatch door, the type found in a submarine. It even had a wheel lock. He wondered how quickly he would drown if there was only ocean behind this hatch. Blakey put his ear to the hatch. There was no deep roar of the ocean. There was no pitch or any sort of sound. He tapped the metal with the keychain flashlight. It echoed, but there was no other sound. He stepped back, pocketed the flashlight, and gripped the hatch wheel with both hands. It wouldn't budge. He thought it must be locked. He looked at the hatch up and down with his good eye in the dim red light, but there was no locking mechanism, just the wheel. He adjusted his stance and put some muscle into it, straining enough for first the muscles, then the joints, and lastly the bones in his arms to scream with ache. The wheel finally gave in and turned. It slowly unlocked with a frightening escalation of clangs, ending with a final boom that was so loud it caused Blakey to regret turning the wheel. "Well, this is what you came for. Or are you too afraid?" Arthur Blakey pushed open the door and stepped through the 5-foot square iron vestibule. Far above, Susan was still waiting with Violet, cold, worried, and impatient. She spread her jacket around Violet, trying to keep the traumatized child warm. Beyond the iron vestibule, a heavy veil of ivy blocked the daylight of an overcast autumn day. Blakey stepped through into a 4-inch blanket of purely golden yellow, orange, and red leaves covering the ground. Thick roots rose and sowed through the leaves like frozen dolphins in an ocean. 2 concrete parallel walls, 20 feet high and 6 to 8 feet apart, ended in another wall, a seeming dead end. Above was a cloudless sky. The color was so solid it could have been an illusion, just a painted ceiling 50 feet up. He had trouble controlling his breathing at the sheer vividness of the sight. "Is it everything you hoped?" "No, not at all. Just wait, it gets better." Everything looked neglected, derelict since inception, but wondrous in its vividness. Forward was the only path, and it felt better than the dark of the stairs, but the walls, despite their height, continued the claustrophobic feeling of the under-the-ocean tunnel, just in a different way. Stepping forward, whooshing with every step, he wondered if there was anything under the blanket of leaves that swelled in banks against the walls and around the weaving roots. The thickness of the leaves made it impossible to determine whether the ground was dirt, rock, or stone. The towering slabs of concrete looked unscalable, with an ivy infection running freely up and down their faces. There was no sun to be seen, and Blakey doubted whether there was one because there was no warmth nor breeze. He knew the smell and feel of the air from his nightmares. Blakey came to the end of the concrete length and then saw it was not a dead end. An optical illusion made worse by his one functioning eye, there was actually a left turn, and he peered around cautiously. There was another stretch of concrete, the same as the first in every way but length. This was half the stretch and ended in a 2-way intersection. "It's a maze." "Of course it is." As he turned more corners, venturing farther in, more variants emerged. Some walls had been ruined by explosions, with great crumbly holes and gaps that were singed black. He peered through a few, but didn't dare stick his head in to look into the next corridor. Making a few more turns and traversing several more lengths, he soon spotted movement in the otherwise motionless place. A smoke trail rose above the walls and curled in the distance. Blakey searched for the path to it, and his anticipation and speed grew with every turn. Color then returned to his face. The whooshing of his feet in the leaves was all he could hear, and when he reached the final wall separating him from the smoke's source, he slowed, hearing voices. He hugged the wall and crept slowly to the corner. At that moment, his dead eye regained some cloudy vision. He paused and eavesdropped while his sight adjusted.